Hey, hola, my friends. I hope all is fine and well with you and yours. My name is Chuck Collins, and I'm the CEO of Together We Grow AZ, where we specialize in sustainable gardening solutions. If you guys haven't already done so, please take a quick second, hit that like and subscribe button so that when we post our latest videos, you'll be made known to it. I could have said that a lot easier, I guess, but you'll be alerted to it and you'll be able to keep fresh and up to date with all of the cool science and gardening innovations that we like to think, do, and then create, along with the help and the guidance of you great folks out there. So without any further ado, I'd like to talk a little bit about keeping your garden cool during the desert heat. Now, in the southwestern United States, specifically Tucson, Arizona, we just went through a pretty rough week talking about heat-wise. I'm talking about in degrees Fahrenheit-wise, we're talking about between averaging 103 to 105 to 112 in my backyard. Now, by any means and measures, that should call instant death, instant death for tomatoes, peppers, basically any plant that you're growing out in the open in the desert. Now, there are some precautions, some things that you can do to help eliminate and help alleviate that heat and that excess sun, one of which is a shade cloth. You guys see that behind me. Well, there are some certain tricks that you can do with the shade cloth as well that will enable that shade cloth to work with you. If you guys aren't familiar with the term, I think it's elliptic. I think it's elliptic. Yes, elliptic. It's the path that the Earth, the Moon, that everything that we see up in the planetary bodies and our galaxy travel through the night sky. And it's basically the same path that you're seeing the sun doing as the sun rises from east and then sets into the west. Well, primarily somewhat east, somewhat west. That's the cool thing. So being an astronomer, what I said is, when it comes to that shade cloth, does the shade cloth have to actually cover the entire enclosure, or should it just cover that elliptic, that path that the sun is following, that east to west? What do you guys think? Well, you look at the plants behind me, and if you go back and look at some of the videos we made in the years past, you can see the answer to that question. Indeed, you can save some money, you can save effort, and you can save a lot of time in building your system if you set up your system, arrange it so that your garden is facing primarily east to west, so that your shade cloth is primarily facing east to west. That's trick number one. Now, trick number two, let me show you a little tip about the shade cloth. Now, as typically set up on a garden, you would have your shade cloth attached to some type of framework, some type of foundation. In our case, we're using old metal poles from, I think this is from a shade structure like a friend gave me like 6-7 years ago. And we're just using some old poles that we had left over to it. So it's basically this U-shaped steel structure that we have right here. I always believe in waste not, want not. You never know when you're going to use something. I'm not a pack rat, anything of that measure, but this really does come in handy. We've actually used it on our system last year as well. Another thing, if you take a look at the shade cloth, you'll see we use zip ties. These are standard zip ties that you can get in the store, but notice that the zip ties aren't incredibly tight. It's so that this shade cloth can move. Now take a look at this, guys. I'm gonna do this in real time. I'm gonna take that, we're gonna push this all the way up to here. We're gonna push this all the way up. Do the same thing on the other side, because remember when I was telling you guys about the path that the sun travels, right? The elliptic. Well, you can set up your shade cloth so that it's providing shade on that same path and not providing too much shade where you don't want it. So once again, you're growing with the garden, you're growing with the desert instead of in spite of it. Now I could do this up a lot neater up there on top, but as you see, when the sun goes east and then it travels to the west, you can easily adjust your shade cloth. And once again, guys, I'm doing this in real time. This can come all the way down to the bottom so that your shade cloth is still providing as much shade block as possible from the prevailing sun. Now, in my case, once again, still the same first take. We're using a really old shade cloth. So you'll see tattered up holes in it and everything else. But if you can reuse something, especially in a garden, especially in today's economy, reuse it. And also, I'm a firm believer in, you know what, there might be someone else who can use it if you don't need it. So you can always check and see, hey, if there's someone out there in the garden community that might be able to use a tool or a resource that you're not using anymore. Each one teach one. That's the gardening way. How cool is this, guys? Check that out. So that's trick number one on how we're providing ample shade and ample sunblock during the hottest parts of the day. Now let's go to trick number two. Here's trick number two. Trick number two is our reservoir. Our reservoir is what contains the greater amount of our nutrient solution. Basically, it's the water with the food in it, the chemical, trace minerals in it that help keep the plants nice and healthy. In our case, we use minimal grow. We keep our reservoir closed. We keep it closed because we want to block any ambient light, any ambient heat that might be coming from outside and touching this reservoir. Now, in our case, we're lucky because we have an actual white grow tray. And with us having a white grow tray, that means that it is reflecting the sun. So when we purchased this, we kept that in mind. We want a grow tray that's going to reflect the sun, put the reservoir under that, that's going to double down on helping prevent excess heat and helping prevent excess, basically just excess heat and excess evaporation. And here's our latest trick, and this is our fan. You see, there's a gap about 2 inches between the top of this reservoir, or 3 inches between the top of this reservoir and the top of the water. So the bottom of this, the top and the top of the water. And that little vacuum of space, that's where the warm air that naturally rises, because warm air is lighter than cooler air. It rises in that little 2 to 3 inch space. This fan catches it, expels it, and that helps dramatically decrease the amount of heat and the amount of exhaust, whatever you want to call it, that's inside of that system. How cool is that? Now, all of this is solar powered, guys. So this fan over here, the fan that we have on the living wall system over there, all solar powered. We also have a bunch of power that we have to spare in our solar powered system. Let's take a look at these tomatoes. Look at this, guys. How cool is that? Now, like I said, by all means and measures, these plants, our peppers, should be dead. Instead, they're having a way about it and just having their best existence in the sun. And together we grow AZ, we grow with the desert and not in spite of it. Now, one of the questions that we're commonly asked about the shade cloth, does it, because we do have monsoon here, so we get monsoon winds, we get some pretty torrential storms, and I'm asked, hey, does the system ever get knocked over? Using this method that I just showed you with the secure but not over tight zip ties and the breathable shade cloth, it actually moves with the wind. So this system has never, it's never fallen down. These hoses that you see in shade cloth are just from use from years and years and years of use. But I didn't want to buy a new one, especially if I had this one sitting there. Why waste the money? There's other things that I could use the money on, just, you never have too many seeds. But so no, it's pretty monsoon proof. Right now, even give you guys a check, I think it's about 97 or 98 degrees Fahrenheit, and the temperature of the reservoir is 78 degrees Fahrenheit, which means it's about 75 or 76 on those plant roots on the inside, which is pretty cool for tomato plant roots because they don't like it super cold and they don't need it super hot. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like I said, I was going to get right into it, and I hope those tips that you learned with the shade cloth, I hope they come in handy, as well as with the fan, as well as with the scientific principle that heat does rise, and if you give that heat a space where that heat can be captured and you give it a forced form of expulsion, then it's going to increase the cooling pressure, the cooling ability of that body of water. Another thing to keep in mind, guys, is the larger body of water, the easier it is to maintain the temperature. So it's a lot easier to maintain the temperature in this one, because I think this is a 26 or 27 gallon tank, I'm not sure, than it is in the 17 gallon tank in the living wall system. So Guys, if you have any questions, please hit me up. I have so much more stuff that I want to share with you, but I don't want to overwhelm you. And until then, plant that first seed and together we grow. Peace and blessings, my friends. Talk to you soon.